Spooky South Coast, Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin, Matt Costa. And intern Kylie is here as well. But Stephanie Burke, out of the studio. She's with Porter for his birthday. Happy birthday to Porter. They're on an adventure. They're going to Oak Island. So anybody that watches that show, Curse of Oak Island, that's where they're going, which is pretty cool. And Matt Moniz is out tonight as well. He's working on something from home, so he was unable to make it in tonight. But we are here with you to talk about the paranormal, as we usually are each and every Saturday night. But we're in the middle of a tough stretch for shows right now. Last weekend was the X-Filers United conference, so we weren't here for that. We missed the week before because I was in Winchendon. We're here this week, and then we won't be here for the next 2 weeks after that because we've got the Wicked Waters cruise coming up next week. And then after that, I'm taking the night off myself. I never take a Saturday night for myself, but I'm taking a Saturday night for myself as news director Taylor Cormier and I are going to see Gilbert Gottfried. So that should be fun. We've got our orange wedge pins ready to wear. For those of you who listen to Gilbert Gottfried's amazing Colossal podcast, you know what we're talking about. For those of you that don't listen, you're missing out on what is probably the best podcast out there besides Spooky South Coast. Which, for those of you who don't know, we are a radio show. We're not just a podcast. Some of you listen to us after the fact on podcast or watch us on YouTube, but we are a live radio show on an actual radio station. It's just tonight we are not actually live on the radio because the Red Sox are on. So we're broadcasting solely on Spooky TV at SpookySouthCoast.com. But that doesn't mean that we still can't run things just like it would be a regular radio show. That includes being able to take your calls, which we will do throughout the course of the night. A little bit later on when we get into our main topic of the night, which will be, well, hashtag Steve Huff sucks. I can get a little raunchy with the language here because we are YouTube only, but yes, Steve Huff at it again, and this should come as no surprise to anybody. Anybody who is interested in the paranormal and is a researcher of the paranormal and spirit communication, you probably know the name Steve Huff. He was a guy who got a lot of attention a few years ago for his, well, now he has what he calls the Wonder Box, but there were some other earlier incarnations of that, and it didn't take long before people started debunking his work and realizing that he was just looking for money and fame, and that he really, really misrepresents what spirit communication is. We'll get into all that. We're going to unpack all of that. We're going to unpack how he got to have so many followers on YouTube, why they so blindly support what it is that he does. If you go to his YouTube channel and see some of his videos, you don't see a lot of dissension in the comments. And there's a reason for that. So we're going to get into all of that. We're going to break down some of these celebrity communications that he's had. But all you need to know about the guy, if you're not familiar with him, and you can go to his YouTube channel if you want, and you can watch some of his videos. Normally, I wouldn't recommend that people go there and even give him the views, because that's just bringing in revenue for him. But he buys so many views anyway. At least I'm assuming he does. I have no proof of that. But I've heard from different sources, speculation here, so I'm not putting myself out there as making a slanderous statement towards Steve Huff. But the stories that I've heard are that he has purchased those subscribers, and that a lot of those views are as a result of that. But I have no proof of that. If somebody comes out and says, I can talk directly to these dead celebrities, that's going to draw attention. So all of those subscribers and those views could be 100% legit. I'm just putting out there what I've heard. But whenever a celebrity dies, usually within 24 to 48 hours, celebrities reach out to Steve Huff. So the man must just be the most amazing ITC researcher that ever lived. He must be the end-all, be-all for paranormal research, that all of these dead celebrities somehow know who Steve Huff is when they die, to be able to reach out and communicate with him. And the fascinating part about this isn't just that he talks to celebrities. Listen, if you're Robin Williams, if you're David Bowie, if you're any of these, super mega famous celebrities who have passed away, you have to understand that people are going to try and make a buck off your name, even when you die. And that kind of comes with the territory. But I don't think paranormal researchers are signing up for that. And when paranormal researchers die, I'm just going to guess that the last person that they would want to reach out to is a guy who has zero credibility amongst other paranormal researchers. Especially when, for the most part, most of them have never even met the guy. And probably have people that they know and love and trust and have worked with that they'd want to communicate with first. And he's pushed it beyond the limits a few times. He's gone beyond all, I don't even want to say class, but he's gone beyond all of that in the past. But this most recent one, I think, is the most egregious in a lot of people's eyes, which is a shame because there was one other case that was far more egregious. And it's something that we in the paranormal world, amongst ourselves, decided not to really talk about. But I think we're going to have to talk about it tonight because if you are a Steve Huff fan, if you're one of these people who found this video because you search YouTube looking for his videos and you want to know why we would put this out there, you need to know the whole story. So we're going to get into a lot of that tonight. But before that, we will be talking with some special guests. Tina Storer and Bob McGill from the show Ghostbait will be joining us for a bit to talk about that program. And we'll find out more about how they went about filming this new season of Ghostbait. Because some of you might remember it was a show before, and it went away for a few years, but then it came back. So we'll get the whole scoop on that and how Tina got involved. And I think a lot of you who listen to Spooky South Coast, you know that Tina got her start on Spooky South Coast. It was her first ever interview, was being on this show. Oh, what was that? Like 2007, 2008, when Paranormal Expeditions first kind of hit the paranormal world. We had the girls in here, and they said then like that was their first ever interview. And now look at her. She's come a long way. She's worked very hard to get where she is. And of course, Bob McGill has been working away for years in the paranormal and refining this Ghostbait concept. So we'll talk to them coming up in just a few minutes. But then after that, it's open season on Steve Huff. Anybody out there that has an issue with the way that he does things, or maybe you're a fan, maybe you're a supporter, maybe you've worked with the guy and you want to call in and defend him, that's welcome as well. At 508-996-0500. But I think most people who listen to this show, we don't really bash people. We let everybody have their say, and we let the audience decide for themselves. We've never used this program in 13 years of doing the show as a soapbox to really go after anybody. Maybe there's been some incidents here and there where we've called people out for things, but for the most part, we don't use this show to attack other people because that's not what you should do. If you have an audience, if you have a voice, you should use that voice for what the audience wants. For the most part, the audience doesn't want us to attack people because what's the goal in that? What's the end result? It might make for an entertaining couple hours of audio to listen to, but it doesn't really further the paranormal world at all. But I think tonight we have to kind of lay it on the line because we need to eradicate this parasite. And I know what most people say. Just ignore them because, that's not real research, and the people who are doing real research know that. But the problem is there's people that don't know that. And so we need this just to exist. We need this just to be out there so that people can find it and listen to it or watch it and say to themselves, oh, I didn't realize that, or I didn't take that into account. Because sometimes you can't just ignore the bad seeds. Because sometimes when you ignore the bad seeds, you end up overgrown with weeds. I'm frustrated here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the Week in Weird. You want to do that? Can we do that? All right, here we go with Matt Blystein and the Week in Weird.
In a world where the paranormal is just a breath away, we're spanning the globe to bring you the best in paranormal news. This is the Week in Weird. Hello, and welcome back to the Week in Weird. As most of you already know, the paranormal community lost a legend recently with the passing of famed demonologist and paranormal researcher Lorraine Warren. But in an eerie coincidence, just hours before her death, an object tied to Lorraine's legacy was on its way to a new home. A rocking chair that's connected to a famous exorcism case in the early 80s of an 11-year-old boy named David Glatzel was purchased by Ghost Adventure star Zach Bagans for his Museum of Haunted Objects in Las Vegas. Both Lorraine and her husband Ed were called in to help with David's exorcism. The chair, often referred to as the Devil's Rocking Chair, was in David's home at the time. It was known to move on its own, levitate, and sometimes disappear and then reappear again. Both Lorraine and David claimed to see the devil himself sitting in the chair. Zach is said to have purchased the chair for a whopping $67,000, and one can assume that it will be on display shortly. For those in the Las Vegas area or planning to be there soon, you can check the chair out at Zach's Haunted Museum. But whatever you do, don't sit on it. Because according to legend, all who sit in the chair will be cursed. And sadly, now neither Ed nor Lorraine will be able to help you out if the legend proves true. And now, it's time for Cryptid Corner.
Cryptid Corner, Cryptid Corner, Cryptid Corner.
This week, Cryptid Corner takes us to the Himalayan mountains along the border of China and Nepal. On April 29th, the mountaineering expedition team for the Indian Army used Twitter to show off pictures of footprints that they claim belong to the elusive Yeti. These photos were taken near Makalu Base Camp 12 miles south of Mount Everest. The photos showed deep footprints in the snow, which the tweet indicates measured 32 inches by 15 inches. Naturally, the photos were met with skepticism and mocking on Twitter. But belief in the Yeti has deep roots in the Himalayan region. The Yeti is a common figure in Nepalese folklore. It was once worshipped as the god of the hunt. In 1951, English explorer Eric Shipton also photographed a large footprint in the snow that he strongly believed belonged to a Yeti. A spokesman for the Indian Army says they plan to send the photos and video that they shot in the area to domain experts for further analysis. The team will be back in the area next month, so perhaps they'll come across more evidence to support their claims. Although we can only assume that the Yeti will be doing what it does best, hiding from prying eyes and staying off of Twitter.
Cryptid Corner, Cryptid Corner, Cryptid Corner.
Our last story may make you feel a little dirty. A new study by the Herslanding Clinic in Switzerland suggests that men with facial hair have more germs in their beards than dogs have in their fur. Seeking to find out if humans and dogs could use the same MRI scanner without hygiene issues, researchers tested 30 dogs and 18 men and compared the amounts of microbial bacteria in their beards and fur. They found that the dogs tested had significantly lower bacteria counts in their fur than the men had in their beards, and on the basis of their findings concluded that dogs can be considered clean compared to bearded men. Further, 7 of the men tested had so much bacteria in their beards that they were actually at risk of getting themselves sick. Ultimately, the study determined that dogs pose no risk to humans if they use the same MRI machine. But the converse may not be true. And that's it for this week's installment of The Week in Weird. I'm your host, Matt Blystein, and I'll see you next week.
All right, so that was the Week in Weird. Oh, sorry, I talked over the end part. That was the Week in Weird with Matt Blystein, and don't worry, for those of you who didn't see the video, it'll be in there in the final product. When you go to the Spooky South Coast YouTube channel as well, you'll also find those Week in Weird videos on their own. So you can always take those and share them around and spread the word of weirdness for the week. Matt Blystein does a fantastic job with those, and we'd like to see you share those around just kind of on their own, as much as we love it when you share the show itself. But sometimes people don't want to listen to a whole 2-hour paranormal show, but they would love to see the great work that he does with The Week in Weird. All right, I think we have the phone issue figured out. I hope so. So we're going to try and bring on Bob and Tina. We'll use Tina as the scapegoat first, and we'll bring her on first. And Tina, can you hear me now?
Hello. Yeah.
Whoa. Hey, it's working. All right, let's not curse it. Let's bring in Bob and see if going to lock you in. See if we can bring in Bob. And Bob McGill is with us as well, Bob?
I am, Tim.
All right, there we go. I think we're in business. See, that's what
Excellent.
you take 2 weeks off. Nothing is the way that it's supposed to be, and then the silent assassin Matt Costa figures it out in 30 seconds. So
There you go.
everybody needs a silent assassin. So I want to say first of all that I'm very excited that the two of you are working together. I've known Tina for a long time, and Bob, I had a chance to meet you a few years ago, and it seems like you guys have a great chemistry together. Bob, what was it like to bring Tina on board with this project?
Sure, I appreciate that, and it is good to chat with you again, Tim. It has been a while, but thank you for having us on. When we were looking for someone to bring on with the reboot, we needed just the right person, somebody that kind of complemented, the show and complemented the goals of the show. And Tina's name came up in a couple different places. And when I reached out to her and had one conversation with her, it seemed like it was the perfect match.
And Tina, for yourself, what was it like to join up with the ghost bait concept that Bob's been working with for a while now?
Of course, yeah. I mean, working with any new people in the paranormal, it's always different, and it just worked straight off the bat. Like, we just clicked really well, and going into this very different concept, it was kind of like, okay, I got to be really sure of myself. I'm going to be, really, truly guiding people through this very intense process. And it was incredible. I'm really proud to be a part of it, for sure.
Now, Bob, for people who might not be familiar, describe to them the concept of ghost bait, because it's a little bit different than your run-of-the-mill paranormal investigation show. You guys take things to a different extreme.
We do. And, a lot of folks that see it for the first time, I think there's a little bit of shock value to it. And I think that's because, to your point, it is a little different than your typical ghost show. In most ghost shows, sort of the third act of the show is the ghost hunters like Tina and myself, ramping up for a big investigation and sort of, possibly confronting or at least attempting to communicate with whatever's there. On Ghost Bait, that same act is actually focused with our clients. They step up, and we actually put them in a position to face whatever it is, whether it's in their home or their place of employment. We give them that power. We let them do that, but with our guidance and our expertise, and we support them through the process. But it does get pretty intense because, unlike Tina and I, they don't want to be there. So that's the concept of ghost bait. But in the end, so far, every case we've worked with was a positive ending.
And I think I think that too, like having somebody like Tina involved as well. She has always been somebody who's been very sympathetic to some of the things that come up in the paranormal. And I know Tina, knowing your background, I know that came about because you were actually somebody that, had to overcome some of those feelings too when you first got involved in paranormal research.
Yes, very much so. I was so afraid of my own shadow for a long time, really. And you've met me. You've known me for so long. I used to be very timid even when I first started out in the paranormal. And, but just by doing this for so long, kind of gained that strength. But I didn't overcome it really until I really went on my first investigation, and I chose to kind of isolate myself. I'm like, okay, I did it. And the thing is, I still get scared though, and I think people who watch the show, they see that I still get kind of jumpy and whatnot because it's my natural reaction sometimes. Even though I'm very used to it, certain cases can definitely spike my nerves for sure.
Well, I think part of that though is, and Bob, you probably have realized this quite a while ago with this concept, is that we say that the emotions that we give off on an investigation, the energy that we give off, can help fuel paranormal activity, and there's probably no more raw energy than the energy that comes from fear or comes from apprehension or anxiety. So, you're actually giving something out there to these spirits to help manifest that could be helping them power up.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Tim. It's exactly where the premise comes from. It's a combination of, some theories in the paranormal world, like you just mentioned, that fear seems to enhance, or to use your words, fuel the potential interaction with whatever's there. And the other side of it is immersion therapy, which is basically to face your fear, you face it head on. And that usually does involve fear. So it really does ramp things up, as you said.
And so we had mentioned before that the show had been on in a previous incarnation. And Bob, you had called this a reboot. How did it come about that this show would return? Because wasn't it previously on A&E?
Yes. Depending upon how you do the math, this is technically the third iteration of the show. It originally started when I started it as a web series. We did 6 episodes on the web, and it was back in 2011. We had, 44-minute episodes on YouTube before binge watching was a thing. So it was a little bit risky, but it was successful enough that, as you mentioned, A&E was interested in it, and I ended up selling the show to them. And we did a few episodes with those guys, and then moved on to other projects. And about a year ago, someone that worked on the original was in development at another company and reached out and asked if I would ever consider doing it again. And if I'm being honest, over the last 7 years, I was asked by a number of different networks to reboot the show, but the circumstances were never right. They kind of wanted to turn it back into a regular paranormal ghost hunting show, if you will. When Travel Channel got involved, they were interested in sticking to the original concept. What was really important to me was authenticity. They literally said, and I quote, we'd rather have nothing happen than, exaggerate what's happening or, fake anything. They literally wanted us to just go with it because they understood it was about the people primarily, and secondarily it was about the ghosts.
And it's something, too, that when you're dealing with a network like Travel Channel where they're putting out a ton of paranormal content right now. I mean, really,
Correct.
There's so many shows that are either airing or that are in development, so you're probably looking at this with a little bit of skepticism to say, are you just looking for anything here, or do you really care about this idea and this concept and about the vision that I have for the show? And it seems like you felt like they definitely had your interest at heart with what they were doing.
Yeah, they did. They did. Well said. I work in TV and film production and have for a long time, and that isn't always the case. There's a reason people say working in Hollywood is like working in a shark tank, and typically they don't have your best intentions. But I can honestly and sincerely say that from day one, Travel wanted to make sure this was done the right way. They wanted to make sure that we took the client's well-being, and their end result was their number one priority, which is what Tina and I's number one priority is. So everybody saw this the same way, and that's the only reason it was able to work out.
And Tina, for yourself, coming into this, I know that you had seen the previous Ghost Bait. Did you have any kind of preconceived notions about how this show would work?
I was really open to pretty much anything, like being able to talk to Bob and really talk to everyone at Travel Channel and, Indigo. The way they presented it, I just felt very aligned. It felt right. I've been on a couple other shows and have been approached from other projects, and just nothing ever felt like it clicked with myself and what I like to do. And this is just kind of perfect. I felt like I could really bring that empathy and like my feminine side, and it balances like with Bob's masculinity. It's just like I think it was just kind of perfect. And I always tell people, like, oh, it's cosmic, really.
Right.
But we trusted Travel like from the start. Like we had producers with us and just sat us down and really just told us like how authentic they wanted to keep it, and that made me feel really good about like stepping into this project.
But Tina, it seems like you need to have both those ends of the dichotomy to be there for the people that are going through this. So you need to have
Definitely.
the strength of Bob and the empathy that you bring to it in order to kind of cover all bases.
1,000%. And you need the yin, the yang, masculine, feminine, and we both bring something different to the table. And I think that's why we are able to work with our clients and at the end of the day make them feel better, because we both can relate to different parts of their fear, you know.
And how were the cases found, Bob, to investigate for the show?
That's a great question. We get that one a lot. We are fortunate enough to have a research team on the front end of things that do extensive research to find our cases. Because as you can imagine, you know, on one extreme, there's people that are just interested in, you know, oh, I get to be on a TV show, and I'll just tell them what I want to hear. And on the opposite extreme, there's the people that literally have no other voice anywhere else, and this is sort of, as dramatic as it sounds, their last hope. So we have a team that looks at forums. They look on, you know, a lot of paranormal sites and news feeds, and they look for people that are sincerely reaching out to our beloved community and saying, you know, I've never experienced this before. I don't know what I'm dealing with. You know, here's what's going on. Who can help me? That's typically where they find the cases, as well as referrals from, you know, other people in the community that have tried to help them without success. Then we go through thorough interviews, Skype interviews, in-person interviews, long before we ever decide to take the case.
And the good part about being on a television show is that it can help you find, you know, these cases that, you know, people are willing to put themselves on the line if they know they're going to be on TV. But then part of the problem is, you know, being able to weed out who just wants to be on TV. And so you don't want to show up at a case and make sure that find out that somebody's just, you know, making up a story. So it's good to have that advanced research that can help you with it.
Absolutely.
I know that there's been some pretty trying cases that you have worked with so far. I mean, do you feel like you've been able to leave every case with having helped the people that were involved?
I can say that with 100% confidence, yes. You know, it's crazy, as you know, have probably seen, if you've watched the episodes. It's only 22 minutes when you really think about it with commercials. And a lot of times you sit there, and Tina and I have been there and lived it. You know, we may be there 3 or 4 days until 3, 4, 5 in the morning, tirelessly working with these people. It's a shame sometimes it's not longer episodes, because you would see how thorough we really are. And in the end, every one of these people that we've had the fortune to work with have come out of it and literally, I mean, I've had my back pop that I've been hugged so hard because people are so grateful that they feel like their home is their own home again and their family can be safe. You know, I think that's a privilege, not something that we just run out and do because we want to hunt ghosts. It's truly helping people. And we've been fortunate enough to do that every time so far.
And that must feel good for you, Tina, too, because I know that you've dealt with a lot of investigations in the past where, you know, you've dealt with more helping the spiritual side of things. With Paranormal Expeditions, right. You guys were focusing on making sure that the spirits came away with this feeling they had a sense of closure. But it must be very rewarding to work with the living and to come out of this seeing the way that you've been able to help them change their lives.
You said it perfectly, yeah, and especially because I can empathize with these people that, yes, I was afraid too, and it's okay. We're here for you. We are validating what you're going through, which sometimes that's just even huge for people, just to have outsiders come in and be like, yes, we believe you, and we actually experienced it ourselves. That can be such a huge step in that healing process. But like Bob said, we've walked away with feeling really good from each and every case, and it's really nice to like stay in contact with some of the people and just see that they're doing well and that they trusted us, and it was such an honor. And we don't take that lightly, of having these people truly trust us to guide them.
And Bob, the question keeps coming up in the chat room, so I have to ask, what led into the decision for the burlap sack?
Sure. Sure. I didn't see that one coming. Honestly, it's a number of different things. The actual use of any sort of a sack, a blindfold, whatever it may be, we actually started with a different hood when we did the web series. The idea is, you touched on the fact that fear seems to change the energy in the room when there's a spirit or an entity or paranormal activity. When you think about it, if you take away your sense of sight and I put you in a dark place, without that hood or without your sight being taken away, you're going to be looking for something to scare you. You're going to be looking around the dark room, and your mind's going to play tricks on you, and you're going to think you see something. It's amazing. And if you do any ghost hunting yourself, blindfold yourself sometime and just sit in a room and listen and feel what's in the room. You'd be amazed at how your other senses heighten when you're not able to look around and let your mind play tricks on you. So the reason we do that is to heighten other senses, but also to intensify fear. Because, if just being in the dark basement turns fear up to a 7, when you can't see, when you feel like you hear something behind you, that's going to go from a 7 to a 10. And that's the path to getting the people to be able to become empowered and face those fears. The burlap actually comes into play for a couple different reasons, one of which, depending upon how the hood is used, you can see a little bit, but not enough to actually see completely clear, which is also more scary than just being able to see or being able not to see at all. The actual material that's used and where it came from is another story that I'm not quite at liberty to get into yet, but I'm hoping to be allowed to reveal that soon.
Oh, well, that sounds very interesting. Please keep us up to date with that. So
I will.
It looks like this Thursday, starting in the morning, there's going to be a ghost bait marathon that'll be happening, so people can catch up on all of on all of this season if they've missed that. And then is it the season finale that's coming up on Thursday night at 10 o'clock?
Yes, yeah. They do back-to-back episodes from 10 to 10:30, 10:30 to 11. Will both be new episodes. And that will be season 1 finale episodes.
So definitely, everybody tune in and make sure that you check that out. Let's deliver some big numbers, and of course, Travel Channel, being the new home of all this great paranormal content, keep providing different things for us. Let's hope that we can get some more ghost bait out of them. Thank you guys for joining us and for informing us about everything with the show, and we look forward to talking with you more in the future.
Thank you so much,
Appreciate
Tim.
that, Tim.
All right, take care.
Thank you very much, and those are all great questions. We appreciate your support and your insight, and always your willingness to chat with us.
Thank you very much. We'll do it again soon.
We love Spooky South Coast.
All right, bye-bye. That is Bob McGill and Tina Storer from Ghost Bait. We thank them for joining us tonight and for sharing with us some of the behind-the-scenes stories of that show, and I'm definitely interested in finding out what is up with that burlap sack. So listen, let me tell you something. And in full disclosure, when the original Ghost Bait aired on the show, aired on A&E back years ago, I came on the show and I think I was kind of, ripping on a little bit, and that I didn't really first of all, I didn't understand then. I didn't have a good enough understanding of the power of fear in paranormal investigation, because I was still under the mindset of, at that time, that you really can't be afraid on an investigation. You've heard Jason Hawes say it on episodes of Ghost Hunters. We can't show fear because we're being called in to help somebody else. So we're trying to tell them that it's okay. We can't be afraid of it if we're going to try and walk away telling them that it's okay. So I kind of understood that mindset. So I didn't know that the fear would be a palpable thing that could actually be beneficial to an investigation. And it led me to start looking into the power of fear, and it led me to look into kind of the energetic resonance of fear. And I put together a presentation for the Ocean State Paracon, which I'll be going back to again this July. But it was a few years ago I presented at the Ocean State Paracon. I called it "It's Okay to Be Scared." And it was a presentation about how fear actually can have a place in paranormal research. And it was going through all of that and making those realizations. as I'm doing that, it brings me back to Ghostbait. Ghostbait makes me think, oh, well, Bob was definitely onto something there. But it's kind of funny because after I had kind of ripped on the show a little bit here on Spooky South Coast, our friend John Tobin had me come out for the Parahistory Con, and he remembered me talking about Ghostbait on Spooky South Coast, and he introduced me to Bob McGill at the convention by saying, oh, hey, Bob, I want you to meet Tim Weisberg. He hosts Spooky South Coast. He thinks Ghostbait sucks. And that was my introduction to Bob in person. But we talked for a good amount of time, and we talked about some of the concepts behind the show, and that kind of helped me realize, what it was that they were trying to do. So, yes, when you look at it on the surface, it seems gimmicky, but when you watch it and you realize what it is that they're doing, then you kind of catch on and you realize, okay, that's something that is a different concept in paranormal research. And I love what they're talking about, because anybody that's come to one of my investigations, one of my events, that we do the same thing, more or less. I don't really blindfold people and leave them in a room alone, but I will take people into the basement of a place and have them turn off all their devices and all their lights and even their cell phones and everything. So we're sitting there in complete and total darkness, and we're tuning ourselves in to the location. We're sitting there so we can hear every floorboard squeak, every time the heat comes on or the air conditioning comes on, what it sounds like. We're going through all of this so that we can basically connect with the location. And it brings out more activity, I think. I think what happens is when you do it, when you sit there and you tune yourself into it, you're going to pick up more easily when there's something anomalous that's happening, or at least something worth paying attention to that may be anomalous. So it's very key if you're just a regular paranormal investigator, and I know that you've got thousands of dollars worth of equipment out in the van, you can't wait to bring it inside. You can't wait to start doing the research and seeing if you can prove that there's something actually going on, or disprove, depending on how your outlook is. But I know that there's that tendency and that desire and that need to turn on all the devices as soon as you get there, or as soon as you start the investigation. But there's value in just sitting there and chilling out and tuning in. And that's when I think we have most of it. In fact, I know when we were in Winchendon a couple weeks ago, that's when we had the most activity, is when we were just hanging out, quiet, nobody really talking, nobody really investigating, just tuning into the location. Because in the end, that's what this all is, really. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. I think that there has to be some sort of human interaction or human observation for paranormal activity to take place. If a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody there to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, it does, because of physics. And probably paranormal activity would do the same. But I don't think it's necessarily something physical. So that's why I think somebody really needs to be there, to be the human agent to observe. And then the question is, well, how do you explain all this footage that's caught on surveillance cameras? Well, the surveillance cameras is the act of somebody observing. But that's a concept we can get into a debate and discussion about some other time, because tonight we're going to get into the topic of Steve Huff. But I'm going to take a fast, like a 1-minute break, so that we can run a little spot here. And then when we come back, we will talk Steve Huff. I will explain what happened on this most recent outing of Huff, this most recent video that he posted. And I know that I could probably run the audio on the show, but I'm not going to, because part of it is he's taking what could be licensed footage, licensed audio, and running it through his devices to make it sound like he's communicating with these people. At least that seems to be what the claims are against him. Again, I don't have proof of it, but there are videos that are being made that look to prove that. And I welcome anybody that's listening to go to the Spooky South Coast page on Facebook. And if you have those videos, feel free to post them there so that we can direct everybody there and they can go and watch them for themselves. But I don't want to run any risk of this show getting flagged or taken down because I want it to exist. I want it to be there so that the people who are buying into his garbage can watch this for themselves. So we'll take a quick 30-second break. We'll be back with more Spooky South Coast in just a moment.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
All right, but welcome back to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin, Matt Costa. And the phone numbers to call in throughout the discussion, 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420. Those are linked up at SpookySouthCoast.com if you can't find them there. You know, there's a lot of discussion going on in the chat room about my shirt. Do I need to give some explanation about my shirt? So for those of you who are unaware, I am a larger man in terms of, I'm not a skinny dude by any means, but I'm also not a tall guy. So I have to buy bigger shirts that might be for somebody who is, 6'4" in ways what I weigh. But I am not 6'4". I am a very small man. Not very small, but I'm not 6 feet tall. And also I have been, I guess you could say, cursed with shorter than usual arms. Matt used to work with me when I was a cook, and it was kind of funny because when I would hold the spatula in my short arms, I looked like a T-Rex, so I would be T-Rex cook. That was a real thing. But diner days. But yeah, I have shorter than usual arms, and I'm wearing like a big and tall size shirt. So yeah, the sleeves bunch up a little bit. And I don't usually wear long sleeves. So look, if I pull it all out, I would look like that. So there's going to be some bunching up of my sleeves. Okay, now that we've explained my wardrobe, this is what happens when I wear something other than a Spooky South Coast t-shirt to do the show. And it looks like I'm trying to be fancy tonight. It looks like I'm trying to dress up a little for the program. This is just the last shirt that I had that was clean. And I know that the listeners don't care about that, but I figured, Matt's in the studio, so I'd be respectful and wear something that doesn't stink. It's funny because there's a regular viewer to my YouTube, my Facebook Live videos that I do from the newsroom, who likes to point out that I'm always wearing a maroon shirt. If only he was watching Spooky South Coast tonight when I'm wearing green for the rare occasion. All right. Enough talk about my wardrobe. But speaking of wardrobes, by the way, we still have the offer on the table. If any paranormal groups or anybody wants to send in shirts, we'll wear them on the show. Well, I'll wear them because I'm the only one that's usually on camera all the time. But if you have a group or something that you want to promote, you want to send a shirt, you can get the radio station address right from WBSM.com. Send it here to my attention, and I'll be sure to wear it. Just make sure it's like at least a 2X because, like I said, I'm not a small man. All right, let's get into the discussion now about Steve Huff. And if you haven't seen the latest video that's going around, so here's what happened. And while we've been off from the show, the paranormal world lost a pretty big name. Lorraine Warren passed away a few weeks ago. And for those who only know of the Warrens through the Conjuring movie series, you may not understand or you may not be aware that they have been involved in some of the most high-profile cases beyond just what they've made movies about. So one of the big things that they were involved in is they had a a role in the later years of the Amityville Horror. Now, they alluded to that in one of the films, but they really can't go into in depth about that because another studio owns the rights to the Amityville story. I'm sure eventually those rights will come up again, and there'll be a bidding war for it, and Blumhouse will probably buy the rights to that story so that they can make a Warren's Amityville movie. But they've been involved in some pretty high-profile cases, and the reason why is because the Warrens sought out attention. They sought out media attention. And part of that was because they could get more cases if they were in the public eye. If you're doing this work and you're trying to help people and you're trying to also get to the bottom of what's going on, you need cases. But also, they felt like they were doing something that they were called to do. And in order to reach the maximum amount of people that you can reach to do that, you need to be in the public eye for it. And yes, they did profit off it as well because this is how they were trying to make their living. So they were writing books and making television appearances. But the reason why I mention all that is because there will be some critics of the Warrens. There are critics of the Warrens who will say somebody exploiting Lorraine's death, it might just be, just desserts for the Warrens because of all the exploitation that they did of the paranormal over the years. But I don't think there was exploitation. I think that there was a combination of needing to get the word out there and get those cases, and also, there's a draw in that. There's something about, doing this and being recognized for it. So I don't really fault the Warrens. I used to think that they were just, trying to make a buck off this. And in some cases, they've been inserted into stories that they weren't really necessarily a big part of. For example, the story in The Conjuring 2, that is a story, the Enfield Poltergeist, where they weren't really super involved in that case. They kind of came in briefly as part of the story. They weren't the heroes that they were made out to be in The Conjuring 2, but, there's also a such thing as creative license with Hollywood. So they're going through some of that, I think, with what's been going on. There's going to be some of that backlash. But in the end, the bottom line is a majority of the paranormal field, most of the paranormal field, recognizes the contributions that they made and the importance that they made, even at the very least, of getting media attention for the cases that we do. Because the dirty secret is we need that media attention. As much as we like to say that we're not in this for that, it's a huge benefit. It helps spread the word that you're out there. It helps spread the word of what you're doing, and it helps normalize what you're doing to other people. So there's a big difference between just being the ghost hunting group that puts their business card up on the bulletin board, the community bulletin board outside Stop and Shop, and being somebody who gets letters and emails and phone calls and Facebook messages and all kinds of other things because they saw you on the network news covering a case. So I'm just throwing that out there. There might be some of that sentiment of, the Warrens exploited things, so they deserve to get exploited, but I'm not going to go down that route. And certainly some of the other celebrities who have had their names brought into this. Again, as I mentioned, when you're a celebrity, you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. That's the kind of stuff that's going to happen. But I don't think that anybody signs up for this so that when they die, there's going to be some guy communicating with their spirit in order to sell, $5,000 Wonder Boxes. So let's get into it. A few years ago, this guy, Steve Huff, pops up on the scene claiming to be, I guess, the world's best spirit communicator. And he portrays it as, something that he just happened upon with his interest in ITC research. He just happened to hit this magic formula to create this box that goes beyond anything that anybody's ever done before. And he feels justified saying that, by the way. There's humility is not something that would be associated with his rise to where he is now. But if you have been watching, as I have, from the sidelines and seeing what's been going on, there's been a cult of Huff that has built up. And he's worked with people in the past, and he's worked with some people that I know and trust and that I would work with, and burned them. He's laid in his wake quite a bit of people in ITC research that have entered into partnerships with him, only to have him kind of take what it is that they've done. There's been other people who have kind of worked with him to help spread their word and what it is that they do, and he doesn't follow through on that. So if you reach out to a lot of these folks, and we're hoping that some of them will call in tonight, there's been a lot of people that have been burned by this guy. And there's been other groups that have worked with him because they get stars in their eyes. Because they see the YouTube follows that he has, the YouTube subscribers that he has, and the views that his video gets. And they say to themselves, we need a piece of that. And maybe there's some people who actually believe in the power of his research, because when you watch it, when you see his videos, they are pretty amazing. Until you see some of these other videos that kind of explain away how they have been done. So I'm just going to throw this out there. And again, I have no proof of anything. No proof that he has been manipulating these videos and trying to, create these under false pretenses. For all I know, it could all be on the up and up. I don't think so. But I'm going to leave that caveat there in case I'm proven wrong. But let me ask you this. A celebrity dies. What do you think happens when a celebrity dies? Any celebrity. It doesn't matter if it's, the most obscure B-movie actor or the biggest star in the world. When they die, somebody is going to YouTube and looking them up. Now, for the most part, people just focus on the bigger stars. But somebody is going and looking them up. And so the search terms for that person on YouTube will get a bump in the 24 to 48 hours after their death. The other part of it, too, is not only are individuals searching for them. When Prince dies, everybody wants to go onto YouTube and watch Prince videos and remember the music. That's to be expected, and there's nothing wrong with that. Also going to YouTube and looking for Prince clips is the media. Because every television news station is going to look for clips that they can use. Every radio station is going to be looking for audio that they can use. So the media is also searching for that term. So there's a lot of people, both in general eyeballs and in media attention, that's going to be looking for that celebrity's name immediately following their death. Now, I don't want to get into some of the issues that psychics and mediums have told us about when somebody dies, that there's a transitional period, that in the first 24 to 48 hours, you can't contact somebody. Some will say some will be more likely to contact you during that time. There's all differing schools of thought on that, at least in what I've encountered. Some people say you have to wait an entire year before you can communicate with the spirit of somebody who's just passed. So let's put all of that aside and just say that if somebody dies in the first 24 to 48 hours of their death, there's something going on. There's got to be some sort of a process there. And there's got to be a desire on the part of the person who just passed. I think we're off the air here. I don't know if the Red Sox are over. I'm going to let that just play for a dead air for a minute, and then there it goes. Okay, so do you think we need to switch over? All right. So there seems to be a need, I would think, of somebody who just passed to want to be around their loved ones who are going through the loss, and they want to be there to kind of comfort them. If you're going to be around anybody, you're going to be around your family. We can get into the whole thing, too, about, well, you know, can you be in multiple places at once when you have entered that, you know, reality, when you enter that plane of existence? You know, does time stop? Does time slow down? Can you go back and forth? Can you do, you know, all of that stuff, whatever. I just don't think that you're looking out for the nearest paranormal researcher who can communicate with you as soon as you pass away. So there's that. But there are regular people, fans, who are grieving the loss of that person, the loss of that celebrity, who are going to YouTube and looking for videos about that person. So you're a fan of Robin Williams, and I'm going to use Robin Williams as the example because it was one of the first big celebrity death Huff videos that, from what I understand, actually drew the ire of Robin Williams' daughter Zelda, who got very upset about these videos being out there. But anyway, Robin Williams dies. If I remember correctly, he committed suicide because he was suffering from a debilitating mental disease. So Robin Williams dies, kills himself. It's a shock to Robin Williams fans. It's a shock to everybody because he's the last guy that we would have expected that from. And so people who are fans of his, or even just people who are casual fans, are in shock over this and are in mourning over this. And they go to YouTube and they want to look at Robin Williams videos that will uplift them and will make them remember Robin Williams in a positive way and will help them not dwell on the fact that he had this sudden, mysterious, shocking death. Should I put myself on the radio? Okay. So here we have Robin Williams passing away, and we have Robin Williams becoming a huge search term on YouTube from people looking for closure, looking for comfort. And as they search YouTube, what do they find? They find a video that mentions the spirit of Robin Williams coming through in spirit communication. They find a video that mentions talking to the ghost of Robin Williams. And they say, well, that's what I want to know. I want to know why he did what he did. I want to know that he's okay. I want to know that he's still around. I'm not ready to let go of Robin Williams. And this video seems like I don't have to. So they watch it. They're blown away by it. Most of those people are probably not paranormal fans. They're probably not people that know anything about the paranormal. So what happens is they're getting this whole new concept right in front of them, and it's got to be wonderful. It's got to be mesmerizing to say, wait a minute, I thought when somebody dies, that's it. Now you're telling me that ghosts are real? Now you're telling me that you can communicate with them? Well, this must be fantastic. So let me watch more of this guy's videos. Let me hit subscribe and follow along. And some of them are falling for this completely. Some of them are in head over heels with this idea and watching all the videos and, you know, just basically saying this guy has found the way to communicate with those who have passed on. But now let's break down what it is that he's doing. Again, this is what's been told to me, so I can't prove this myself, but I've been told that basically he's taking audio from existing interviews that he pulls off of YouTube, and he's running that through his Wonderbox, which is really nothing but a bunch of guitar pedals that are filtering and distorting those original clips so that you can still kind of understand that it's their voice, but not really. And by the way, these videos are so slickly produced, and I'm not going to get into what Huff's whole other career was. I'll let other people talk about that, but let's just say he has some filmmaking experience from what I've been told. And so these videos are slickly produced, and what we're getting is this audio that could be overdubbed. So we don't even know for sure 100% that it's coming out of the box. But let's just take it at face value and say it looks like it does. And for the most part, there's enough of a room echo, a room tone behind it that we can say that it's probably coming from the box. But I will tell you this, all of these videos that I've seen that break this down have pretty convincingly found the clips where the actual words that are being spoken come from. And it just sounds like a distorted version of that actual clip. Now, this is, in all fairness, Bart L is posting in the chat room, and he's right. He's saying, so his guitar pedals are not as real as a broken radio, the strange rules of woo. And no doubt that the broken radios are questionable. And I say that having been somebody that used them. And I know that there can be a confirmation bias with that, where you're expecting to hear something and you're going to listen to it until you hear it. Or you're going to take what's being put out over these devices and you're going to create a narrative with that information that will probably not be based in anything. That's not annoying. So the whole concept of I guess somebody's waiting for somebody to come out of the restaurant there. All right. This is ridiculous. There's somebody laying on their horn outside the studio because they're waiting for somebody to come out of the 99 restaurant. So anyway, yeah, they're both flawed. And that's part of the reason why I don't use those boxes anymore, because there's too much of that involved in it. And there's even some of that involved in the Echo Vox, which I do use, so you have to be careful of it and be aware of it. But let's get back to the Huff videos and what he's doing. So the death of Robin Williams kind of kicked a lot of this off. Other celebrities die. He does the same thing. People are tearing them apart. They're finding the actual clips in which he has pulled this stuff out. And then we get to, I'm going to skip over the Constantinos for right now. I'm going to get to Art Bell. Because when Art Bell died, Art Bell apparently reached out to Steve Huff. Now, Art Bell, in the course of his career, talked to every paranormal investigator that was probably working at that time. You know, when you're doing shows almost every night of the week, almost every night of the year, and you're talking about these kind of topics, there's a lot of opportunity there to get people on. So he's talked to many, many paranormal researchers over the years, including some of those on the very forefront of electronic voice phenomena research, including those who he probably felt a closer connection with than to others. But yet he randomly just decides to communicate with Steve Huff in what is clearly clips of Art Bell from other shows, from the thousands and thousands of hours that he'd done of radio. But he puts that out there. And now this past week, you know, it's funny now because when a celebrity dies, those of us in the paranormal community, we all like to joke about it, but it's not really a joke anymore. We say, well, I wonder how long it's going to be until Huff talks to that person. But it's really not funny. And so we knew that it was going to be only a matter of time when Lorraine Warren passed away that Steve Huff would have a Lorraine Warren video up. And kudos to Rob Hernandez, who shared it with me on my Facebook page earlier today. And I'm sure he'll post it up on the Spooky South Coast page as well. But it didn't take long for them to find that all of these clips came from the same 2005 Lorraine Warren interview. But But I don't think he cares. I don't think Huff cares that people are taking these videos and finding out where they really came from and exposing within the paranormal community that he's a total fraud. Because it's not the paranormal community that he's making these videos for. He's making it for the common, average, everyday YouTube chump who's easily duped. You know, the carnival people have words for the folks that buy into his stuff. They call them rubes. In the wrestling world, we call them marks. People that are going to believe whatever it is that you tell them. It's not their fault. They just don't know any better. If you're showing something so amazing and you're willing to believe, then it's going to be really hard to convince you otherwise. So that's the big part of the issue. And I think it's really ticked some people off that he's done this now with Lorraine Warren, because Lorraine Warren is tied into some of the biggest names in paranormal research who would clearly be a much better option for her to reach out to than Steve Huff. You don't think that John Zaffis, the nephew of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who is an active paranormal investigator to this day, who is out investigating at least every weekend, probably most nights during the week. Oh, and who, by the way, I know has been in regular contact through EchoVox with Ed Warren. Because I've seen it, I've heard it, I've been there when it's happened. You might not have seen it or heard it. You might not have seen the videos because he's not putting them all over YouTube to try to generate income for himself. It's just something that he's been sharing with the rest of us in the paranormal community. And something that, by the way, I've known that he's been doing for a couple of years, but wasn't allowed to say anything about because he hadn't gone public with it. That information didn't come public until last summer when the researchers that he works with gave a lecture on it at a convention that I was at and spoke about it for the first time publicly. So instead of reaching out to John Zaffis to let him know this thing that we've all been working on in our family for all of these years is real, is legitimate, she reaches out to a guy who has a dubious at best reputation and wants him to be the guy to carry out her message. Makes sense. Makes total sense. Question from the chat room. Matt wants to know, what if he's the only one asking these folks to come through on his device and they just show up? Nope. I doubt that. Highly doubt that. I highly doubt that when Lorraine Warren passed away, there wasn't 1,000 paranormal investigators, as soon as they heard that she had passed away, that reached out for their devices. Reached out for whether it be their digital recorder, their broken radio, their EchoVox, whatever it may be that they use for spirit communication. Hell, even a Ouija board. There would have been somebody that would have reached out, people with closer ties to Lorraine Warren, that would have said, you know, we're here, give us a sign. So that is, I understand asking the question, but very little chance that that's the possibility. And then we can go back a step and we can get into the story of the Constantinos. And I'm reluctant to get deep into this because of what happened and because of the circumstances surrounding it and because we as paranormal investigators and paranormal researchers decided not to take one of our own, or two of our own in this case, and take those tragic circumstances and utilize it for the benefit of, you know, paranormal media. It's not a talking point. But it needs to be addressed in the context of what we're talking about. Because it was the most, out of everything that happened, the most unethical thing that Steve Huff has done. Even if he had the ability, and these videos were legitimate, and this communication was legitimate, and it was that earth-shattering and game-changing, that you have to share all of it with the world and let it out. This was the circumstance where you don't do that. And again, I say that I'm not going to get into it. So if you want to know the details about what happened, you're going to have to find it elsewhere. But it was a tragedy. It was a shock. There were problems behind the scenes that some people knew about, some people didn't. But I don't think anybody expected it to end the way that it did. And I don't think it was even 24 hours, or at least not even 48 hours, before Steve Huff's posting videos where the Constantinos are reaching out to him. Out of everybody that they worked with, everybody that they were close to, and it was a good majority of the field, they were ubiquitous. They were everywhere. And, I mean, we had them on the show. And Debbie said to us, you know, you have to be going to these conventions. You have to be going out and networking with people. You have to work with everybody that you can. And they did that. They worked with everybody that they could. People that were part of their family, essentially. And they bypassed all of those people because they thought the best person to carry their message would be Steve Huff, a guy whose reputation, again, was dubious at best. So at some point, something needs to be done. We're not going to change the minds of all of the regular people, all of the non-paranormal researchers who are watching his videos and are seeing this and being blown away by it because they don't know any better. We can't change their minds. So we're never going to do anything about the fact that he's got 1 million subscribers and in millions of views on his videos, and that he's probably making enough money in YouTube revenue to never have to work a day in his life. And that if some of the suspicions are to be believed, when these wonder boxes show up on eBay, he isn't going in there and artificially driving up the prices of them, which I've heard, because they sell for $12,000, $15,000 for what are basically echo chambers with guitar pedals, which people are building themselves based on the way that he's built his and saying, look, this is all that it is. So maybe we'll never change the minds of those regular people, but we have at least somewhat of a voice to be able to say, this is garbage and it needs to stop. The dead celebrities, families, and representatives, they can go after him. They can stop him from profiting off their name. YouTube could put a stop to him, or at least require that he put some sort of a disclaimer in his videos. But it has to be brought to their attention. You know, he may be a big fish in the small pond of things, but in the grand scheme of things, most celebrities' estates don't give a crap about Steve Huff. I think Zelda Williams was the exception, from what I understand. She actually took issue with it. But we can speak out in one voice, and ignoring the problem isn't the way to do it. We need more videos like this one will be on YouTube counteracting his claims. And if you see a video such as what Rob put out today, or what he shared with me today, but what he put out in debunking the Lorraine Warren video, you know, we need to like those videos and share those videos and help increase the profile of those videos so at least we can counterbalance some of the garbage. Now, I invited Steve Huff to come on the show, as I have in the past, because we have talked about him in the past before. There was the whole thing a couple of years ago where he was being inundated with evil spirits, and so he couldn't keep doing what he was doing. Did I say spirits or did I say spirits? Did I say it like Phil? I think I said it like Phil. Phil says spirits, and he says spiritual. But anyway, He took a step back because evil spirits were taking over his house and influencing his family and putting his family at risk, and so he had to step away from the paranormal. And most of us knew better. Most of us didn't buy it. But what ends up happening is a short time later, he comes back. Why? Because all of his fans wanted him to come back because of the work that he does. And because he's making a difference and he has to fight through it all. And you just have to watch one of his videos to realize that it's a mockery of what it is that we do with spirit communication. And before Bardell gets into it, I know that it's open for mocking, and it's at its very base, it's hard to believe. But it doesn't help to see, red gelled mood lighting and candles lit all around and all this other stuff that he does with these videos and all the music and all that, the rosary beads draped over the wonder box, all that stuff. It's not helping in what is supposed to be a scientific or at least pseudoscientific endeavor. All right, I think I've had my soapbox moment here. Again, as I mentioned, we don't like to bash people on this show. But this is something that I think needs to be addressed. So let's open the phone lines, 508-996-0500. We're going to keep it short. We're going to keep it tight. If people have, points that they want to make, we're going to keep it somewhat in the realm of, making sure we don't go overboard with accusations. I feel like most of what I said here in my rant has been backed up by things that I've seen other people post, other videos that have been made, which is why I'm trying to reference those as much as I can, because I'm not trying to make baseless accusations here. So let's just keep that in mind as we take some of these calls. Good evening. You're on Spooky South Coast.
What's shaking, Playboy?
You waited a long time, Lamone. I'm impressed.
Oh, I thank you. It's like I was really angry about that Huff guy. And it's like, I remember when he's angry, he jumps on his bike and he leaves in the house. So, Huff, you're like, oh, all right.
We're having a little trouble understanding you, Lamone. Your phone's cutting out.
Well, I'm online. I could hear myself talking on the phone. I was listening to you over the phone talking.
Okay, you sound better now. We can make out what you're saying now.
All right. So I was saying like that, especially after that movie, that one Robin Williams movie, What Dreams May Come.
Right.
You think you'd hope you'd have a different thinking and feeling, understanding about that, about suicide. And
well,
that,
that movie is probably where he pulled most of those quotes from, because you're talking about life and death in that movie. It's very ripe for somebody that wants to pull out quotes if they're gonna make a fraud video.
And that was a very good movie too. That's what I thought too. That was very good. I'll tell you where I was when I saw that, but I don't want to tell you in front of everybody else. But I'll tell you one thing about what's his face was there. Ike Turner was there when I saw that movie that night. I'll tell you about that some other time. But also another thing, that when he committed suicide, that next week he was supposed to go in and talk to make the live action Aladdin that they're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
He's supposed to be reprising his role as the Jinn. And that's so sad,
Right, because that really was a role that he owned.
Exactly. And have you seen the trailers for the new one?
I have, and I love Will Smith, but it's a tall task.
Yeah, well, he looks like
no pun intended.
He's down for it, I guess. But like I said, that some things just shouldn't be touched with. I wonder who's going to be the first one to take up Hugh Jackman's role as Wolverine. That's what I'm talking about. I'll be like OJ. I'm not saying OJ should be it. Well, maybe. Right. I don't know.
Well, I don't want to get too far off the topic of Steve Huff, Lamone. Have you seen some of his videos?
Yes, I have.
And what are your thoughts?
I haven't seen Lorraine Warren yet, but I've seen a couple. I saw that one with Robin Williams. I was kind of upset. I was like, I've heard all those things from the movie, like you just said. I heard all those things from him doing that. And I even heard him talking some of those things even when he was USO and stuff So those same things are over and same things got it from there. You know?
And what's funny is, I know that you were an Art Bell fan too, and the Art Bell video, people were so easily able to pick that apart because they've listened to Art shows again and again and again. And it wasn't like he was picking obscure shows that nobody would listen to on a replay. You're getting shows that people have heard over and over again. If you're going to pull audio, and I'm not saying this is where it came from, but if you're going to pull Art Bell audio, you're not going to pull it from the Malachi Martin episode. Or any of those episodes, because the people go back and listen to those ones.
And see, that's, to me, it's not like he's Rich Little, okay? Am I getting old as a Rich Little? Just like, he could pretend he could make his own voice, or he could imitate the voice. I don't think, like I said, that was all play. And people spend money for that. Like I was saying, for $5,000, that box better be a wonder box. That's here right now. I don't spend that kind of money on anybody's box.
Well, 5,000 is kind of on the low end for how some of those go. I mean, I've seen them go, up in the tens of thousands because, people seem to think that these are a rarity that only Huff can build. But in actuality, people have taken them and broken them apart and found ways to it's the same with the Frank's box. People want to collect an original Frank's box, but there's still Frank put the schematics up for his boxes. He didn't hide the way to build them, so there's still copies of boxes that are out there, and just because Frank didn't build them, they're still out there. But the ones that Frank actually built, they seem to have a resale value if people do decide to part with them, which they really shouldn't, because he gave them to them as a gift. I mean, I understand.
I've made a few of those myself from just from the dial radio, FM, AM station. It's really easy to do, and it's like, and for me, it's like I've done it. I wouldn't want to do it in my house. Okay, like I said, I don't need to. Even though I'm kind of against it, I don't need to listen to what's going on in my house. In reality, it's like if any person in the home should, if the spirit knows you can hear them, or how any way you have access to hearing them, they're gonna come at you really hard. And probably not in the nice way. They'll get upset. Like, oh, we know you can hear us. They'll get upset and try to get attention. Your other mirror way. It's crazy to me.
Well,
and it's like,
no, I have to agree. I'm going to let you go, Lamone, because again, your phone's cutting out a little bit, and I want to get to some of the questions in the chat room. But I will say this before we go.
One more thing I have to say.
Okay.
One more thing. Today was the Free Comic Book Day all across the globe.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I was hoping that everybody got a chance to get there. When you were on the code, when you were on earlier on Dave's show this week,
mm-hmm.
when I was calling and talking to that Gabriella, I was going to tell you that before but you hung up on me. So put that straight. That was on Monday, right? Tuesday. I said, yeah. Saturday, people could go and that 51 different titles of comic books that were given away.
Yeah, I mean, and people are going around collecting all of them, so it's a great thing. It really pushes literacy, and it really pushes people to get into collecting the art of comic books. So, yeah.
And one comic book from last year is already worth $120.
Oh, see, there you go. So it's worth getting out there and collecting them.
Exactly. So, but I'll listen to the rest of the program, and hopefully I can see Matt Blue on his program. Weekend Weird. I remember meeting women weekly when they're weird. So
we'll leave it at that. Thank you, Lamone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a great night.
Playboy.
Take it easy.
All right. Hey, Barnell.
All right. I did find Lamone on Facebook too, by the way, and I sent him a friend request, so I'm hoping he accepts it. I can only imagine what the messages will be like, though. Good evening. You're next on Spooky South Coast.
Good evening, Tim, and good evening to all your colleagues.
How's it going?
It's going. It's going like it shouldn't be going because I should have received everything 2 days ago. So what I'm
by the way, freaky moment, right as you call in, a Publishers Clearinghouse commercial came on the TV in the studio. I'm not lying.
Well, I figured what I would do because I was told by Homeland Security not to tell anybody about what's going on, but I decided that since I was supposed to receive this 2 days ago, I figured I'd air all the dirty laundry because maybe people that are holding up the progress, maybe they will speed it up. There will be no car in this. However, there will be 2 checks of 9 figures.
That's before the decimal point?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll give you those figures. The first one is a legal settlement against the state of Massachusetts, and I forgot who else. $200 million, completely tax-free.
How is the state of Massachusetts on the hook for this if it's coming from Publishers Clearinghouse? They're a private entity.
It's not coming completely from Publishers Clearinghouse.
Okay.
The state is involved because they were a big part in holding up the delivery for 2.5 years, like the FBI. But the state of Massachusetts is involved, and I forgot what. But this particular amount is a legal settlement, completely tax-free. The sweepstakes company is $155 million, which I have to pay a tax on. The tax that I was supposed to pay on was $800, which I only sent in $6 because when I got my pension, I had to pay my excise taxes or my license was going to be suspended. So I asked the gentleman from Homeland Security who's in charge of the money, and he said that the judge has control of the money. So I said, well, tell the judge that if he's going to tie this up for $200, because the $200 is in tax money and it has to go either to internal revenue or I forgot what it is. But in his judgment, the gentleman that was pretending to be a lawyer, he's getting 20 years and he's in San Quentin right now. And there was also a gentleman that identified himself as a federal judge, and he, I believe, is getting 20 years in San Quentin. And the gentleman that portrayed the lawyer, his family had to send me $75,000. So I'm getting those three amounts. And it should have been, like I said, 2 days ago. So apparently the judge is holding this up for $200 in tax money. So it got me a little irritated. So I'm hoping that I hope he and the Homeland Security people listen to your show.
Well, I'm sure they do.
Because what I intend to do is, if I don't get the money by Tuesday, I am going to make. I believe the president has a line that you can call him. I'm going to call the president, and I'm going to have this judge taken off the bench.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, just making a suggestion here, but I think Robert Mueller has nothing to do right now. We could probably get him on this.
Yeah, and not only that, I'm gonna sue him for 3 times the amount that I'm getting, just for the aggravation. Because, like I say, you know, they keep telling me that they want to get it to me fast because it's been like 2.5 years, and now he's going to extend it for $200.
Right. It doesn't seem to make any sense. I hate to cut you short, but I am going to move on because we have a lot of Steve Huff to cover before the end of the show. But definitely keep us up to date with that. Let us know too if you do reach out to the president. Listen, I'm not gonna say that President Trump listens to WBSM. I don't want to, make that bold claim. But I will say that when we put out there that Irene Miller was turning 114 years old, or 112, however old she was, I forget off the top of my head. But when we put that out there, she did receive a letter signed by President Trump and the First Lady that was delivered to her here at the radio station. So,
well, he does listen to Howie Carr, so he might listen to WBSM.
I mean, we have the best app in the business, so he could be listening to Howie Carr on the WBSM app. For all we know, he could be a Spooky South Coast listener. So maybe he's listening, and maybe he'll reach out and let us know.
Okay, have a good one, Tim. We'll keep in touch.
You as well. Take care.
Bye-bye.
And President Trump, if you are listening, just slide into my DMs on Twitter, and just let me know. It's at Tim Weisberg, but you know that. So moving on back to the Huff discussion. So one of the questions that came up in the chat room is, how is it different for Huff to do what he's doing and for us to say, you know, we're going to have a paranormal investigation and you can come and talk to these spirits that might be 100 years old. And by the way, we're going to charge you for that to be able to do that. So how is that different? And it's a fair question. And I'm going to explain to you how it's different. First of all, we don't put up any claims when we're on these investigations. If it's a historical figure, it's a different story. Or if it's somebody who has, you know, passed away a long time ago, it's a little bit of a different story. But we're very cautiously aware of the living relatives of people who are involved in paranormal investigations. So, for example, there's a place that we investigate. I won't say where it is, but we go there. And when we go there, there was a suicide that took place in the 1990s. And when we investigate that, and it's not Edaville, I'm not referring to the suicide house for those of you who will try and guess that. But when we talk about the investigations here, and when we do the investigations, sometimes this person will come through. And I make it a point when we're conducting the investigation to say to people, this part can't go up online. This part is not something we can share on the radio show. This is not something we should be tweeting about. This is not something we should be posting on Facebook, because there are still living relatives of this person that live in that town, and we don't want to upset them. So this part, if we're going to communicate with this particular entity, this particular spirit, it's just for us. And people understand that, and they respect that, and they're willing to sacrifice, you know, what might be the best catch of the night in terms of data, and they'll keep it to themselves because they respect what's going on. And that's the big part about what we do that's different than what he's doing. We have a respect for what's going on. We're not trying to capitalize on who these people were. What we're doing is we're taking a place that has a reputation for being active, or in some places, you know, it doesn't, but we're trying it out for the first time. But we're taking a place that has paranormal activity or the potential for paranormal activity, and we're utilizing that to help them raise money to continue on. And so if you're the person who died in, say, for example, the Smith Harris House in Connecticut, which is a small heritage museum that doesn't have a lot of money, doesn't really have a full-time staff, kind of just, you know, struggles to some degree to be able to put on all the programs that they want to and all the education that they want to give people. I think if you're the spirit of a person who died in that house, and if you want to see that way that house is being honored to continue on, then you wouldn't have a problem with what it is that what we do. Because we're going in there and we're helping them, A, raise funds, but B, keep that history alive. And that's why we do the events that we do. We don't do them because, you know, we want to exploit the spirits that are involved in it. Now, can it come across as exploitative? Sure. And I understand where people might have that understanding and that feeling, but it's not intended to be that. It's intended to, first and foremost, keep historical locations going, but also, secondly, to give people an opportunity to have a paranormal experience if they've never had one. You know, we can't guarantee that you will, but we want to bring you to a place where we think that it could happen so that you can have your eyes open and you can realize for yourself that it actually is real. So it's just education. Now, Bart says, you know, pretend to have a ghost in the house to have a business, to keep a place in business. Well, that really wouldn't work, because if we're not going in there and getting activity, then nobody's going to go there. And a place can't just survive on, for example, ghost box audio alone. A place won't stay going as a reportedly haunted location if the evidence isn't strong enough. And I understand that people will look at the equipment that we use and call it into question, and I do too, because there is no piece of equipment that will prove that there's a ghost there. All of the equipment that we bring, for the most part, all that it does is analyze and measure environmental changes. And we're making the assumption that those environmental changes are being caused by this paranormal activity. But you have to have some other some other sign of that paranormal activity being there for it to work and for it to make a difference. If you just bring me into a room and some lights light up and the EMF field fluctuates and the temperature drops, okay, that's going to make me pay attention, but it's not enough for me to walk away saying there's definitely something there. It's the personal experience that matters. And that's why I will have no problem going into a place and having a night where we're getting a lot of activity on the meters, but no real personal experiences, and walk out and say, I don't know if there was anything there. But I'll walk into a place and have a lot of personal experiences, but nothing on the meters, and say, I think we encountered some activity tonight. Because that's the difference. It's the personal experience that does it. And it's the personal experience that keeps people going back. Nobody's going back to a place again and again just because their K2 meter lights up every time they go there. Unless they're trying to, figure out what it is that makes their K2 meter light up, and they're not saying that it's paranormal activity, but they're trying to figure out, what sort of electromagnetic anomaly is causing that to happen. Then, you're trying to root out the cause of that. But that's kind of the way that we look at it. Yes, and to Bart's point, the meters are kind of meaningless. It's if you can use them in a way where and it sounds weird to say, but I use them more as a way to communicate if we think that there is a presence there. I like to put two K2 meters down next to each other and ask for just the left one to light up, or just the right one to light up, or to make this one go to this point and this one go to that point. I like to use it as a way to prove that there's something there that's intelligently interacting with what it is that I'm saying. But I don't go into a place with a bunch of meters and record all of the fluctuations that happen and come back and say that's a ghost, because it's probably not. 99.9% of the time, there's a different reason for it. And if you pay attention and you figure it out, you'll have that root cause before you even leave the place. I mean, there's a story I've told before, but I'll tell it again. The Braintree Town Hall in Braintree, Massachusetts had this ridiculous reputation of being haunted, to the point where people who worked for the town would not go into the basement because they were so afraid of what was down there, because every time they go down there, they get touched. And every time they go down there, they feel a presence. And every time they go down there, they see shadows and all of these different things. And so we had the opportunity to go in there and check it out and see if we could figure out what was going on. And because it was something that was coming back as all personal experience, and nobody had actually really gone in and conducted an investigation, nobody realized that when you walked down into the basement, as soon as you hit the bottom of the staircase, you were blasted with a high electromagnetic field, because right around the other side of that wall was all the circuitry for the building that was all outdated and unshielded. So when you walk down there with a K2 meter, and we actually went down there with a tri-field EMF detector, because this investigation was so long ago, I don't even think K2s were a thing yet. But we had Matt Moniz's tri-field meter. And as soon as we walked down there, it's just spiking off the charts to an unhealthy level. And when we go around the corner, that needle is buried because there was such a high EMF field there. Now, what happens when you have a high EMF field? Well, people will report feeling like they're being watched, feeling paranoid, feeling like somebody's touching them, feeling like there's some sort of a presence there. That is just the natural reaction of a high amount of electromagnetic energy around you. So in that case, yes, the meters were 100% needed, but it was needed to disprove what it was that people were sharing from their personal experiences. So, yeah, the bottom line is we don't know if any of it's real. We can't prove that any of it's real. So everything that we talk about has to be taken with a grain of salt. And we don't hide from that. It's not like we're telling people when they come to an event, you're definitely going to encounter a ghost. We try to talk them through. It's bad business, by the way, to sell tickets to a ghost event and tell people while they're having this experience, well, hold on, let's not get excited. Let's think about this. Let's see what else it could possibly be. That's bad business. The right thing to do if you're trying to sell tickets to a ghost event would be to say, oh, really? What's happening? Wow, it must be a ghost. But we can't do that because that would be irresponsible and because that would just be plain wrong. The right thing to do is to talk them through it and to try to figure out what else it could be and make sure that those are eliminated. And so, yeah, does it help sell tickets? No. But does it help us walk away with some credibility and also to help us, try to figure out what other people might experience when they go in that same place? Yes, so that's what we do. And there's a big difference between that and putting up a video where you're saying to people, we talked to the ghost of this person. Now, some of them are, we'll put up videos that are tongue-in-cheek. Case in point, the masturbating ghost video. We talk about that one a lot because, people laugh at it and they think that it's funny and we call it a masturbating ghost. But in all actuality, we have no proof that that's what it's doing or that it's even a ghost. It's just an anomalous stick figure that showed up on this camera that, by the way, will put anomalous stick figures all over the place that don't actually turn out to be ghosts. But it's sitting in a bathtub as opposed to just being a stick figure that appears standing somewhere. You can see the fact that it's sitting, and you can see what it's doing physically. So we feel pretty confident in making that assumption. But in the end, none of it is definitive. None of it is definitely true. And I will say, oh, well, it's really hard. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. And I can't really think of anything else that it would be. But I never say that anything is 100% absolutely definitive. I've been thrown against the wall by a ghost. But I will never 100% tell you that it was absolutely no doubt in my mind a ghost that threw me against the wall. Because the doubt is still in my mind at any given point that it could have been something else. And part of that is I will argue with you what a ghost actually is. I think a very small portion of the spirits that we encounter would actually be a dead person's soul, which is a whole other topic for a different time, but I just feel like there's a difference between bringing people out so that they can maybe have an experience and putting up a video and telling them that you're talking to the spirit of somebody else. Now, if I'm wrong on all of this, I will say that I'm wrong. But I will close this episode out by saying it doesn't sit right with me that all of these strategical reasons to put up a video of a dead celebrity combined with the debunking videos that other people have put up, combined with Steve Huff's reluctance and disdain that he shows for the rest of the paranormal community, the fact that he thinks that he's better, the fact that he has disparaged other people's work and pushed himself as the only true spirit communicator. When you put all of that together, that's going to get the stink eye from me, and hopefully it gets the stink eye from you. We've put a lot of information, or at least a lot of speculation out there for people to kind of go back and just keep that in mind. If you are a person who is a fan of his work and you think he's on the up and up and he's 100% legit, just keep the points that we've made tonight in mind when you go back and you watch some of his other videos, or when he inevitably puts up another video as soon as the next celebrity dies. And just have that be in the back of your mind. Have it be in the back of your mind that it's opportunistic. Have it be in the back of your mind that it's dubious in its origin. And have it be in the back of your mind that there's a profitability in this for him. So just keep those things in mind, and you'll wonder if this really is the altruistic pursuit of spirit communication that he makes it out to be. And Steve Huff, in the final 2 moments of this show, if I'm wrong, if I'm way off base in any of this, all it takes for you to change my mind is to actually reach out and try to change my mind. It's not like I'm hard to find. Tim@SpookySouthCoast.com. I've sent you emails in the past. I think you blocked me on some social media. Oh, and I thought I would also mention why all those YouTube video comments are always so positive and amazing about all the great work that he does. It's because if you put a comment up there that disparages him or his work in any way, he deletes it. Sometimes they'll stay up for a little while, and people will maybe get a chance to see some of them, but they'll disappear soon enough. And if you think I'm wrong, go under one of his videos and put a nasty comment. Or I'm sorry, not a nasty comment. Put anything that calls into question what it is that he's telling you. And see how long that stays up there for. And see how long it doesn't take for all of his acolytes to turn on you. All of his sycophants to turn on you. So that does it for this week's show. We'll be off for the next 2 weeks. We have the Wicked Waters Cruise next week, and then I'll be off after that, but then we'll be back in a couple of weeks with more shows. Until then, for Matt, for Stephanie, for Kylie, I'm Tim. Stay spooktacular.